Let's jump into it.
Tastes like a sunrise.
Spoiler warning. We're going to be talking about Spider-Man to the Spider-Verse. It's...
Oh, I thought we were talking about spoilers. We're also talking about the new Hobbs movie.
Really?
We are.
Oh, yeah, that's right. But Across the Spider-Verse, obviously a new film.
Yeah.
We got a lot to say because it's really excellent.
It is. It's insanely good.
So let's jump in from there. Across the Spider-Verse.
So if you had to pick one thing that was your favorite, like out of everything, what would you say it is? Like animation, voice acting, cameos.
That's a really hard question. That's a really hard question. Man, you're giving me one. That's both barrels right up front.
Yeah.
Probably overwhelmingly for me, it's how the movie looked.
Yeah, animation wise.
I don't know what it is. I mean, obviously I have a lot of guesses, but the Across the Spider-Verse movie, Into the Spider-Verse movie, they both just look incredible.
Yeah.
They just look incredible. It reminds me of the first time like I saw a Studio Ghibli film.
Okay, yeah.
Like, it's that kind of thing where you go, wow, a lot of craft was put into this. A lot of time, a lot of precision, a lot of meticulousness.
You can say they tried. You look at that and you're like, hey, they did something. They tried at that
They
one.
really did.
Huh.
Yeah, they really did. What about you? What's your favorite thing?
I mean, animation is probably like the biggest one because I know that's what they focused on the most.
Profoundly good.
I know the audio is great, but I know that some theaters are suffering from audio
Few
problems.
things in the mix seem to be done a little weird. Yeah.
Which, I mean,
could just been our theater maybe, but seems like it's kind of rife all over the place. So.
Yeah, so I'd probably have to say animation as far as that because it's cool to see so many different types of animation be blended in so well and seamlessly where it doesn't feel like too overwhelming. Definitely overwhelming in some areas, but not in a bad way.
Yeah.
More like I just need to pause and like go frame by frame to see everything that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah.
Like we talked a little bit about when we were first like texting about the movie that Gwen's world is like all watercolor based on the covers
her
of her
comic.
Original comic series.
Very like heavily. Wow,
Yeah.
I was so impressed by that.
Miles' world is all sort of pseudo cell shaded, like drawn, kind of more traditional style, but still has a very heavy comic influence, a very thick lines and beignet dots and stuff, like the anime or the cartoon worlds had that kind of thing. Even Ben Reilly was sort of like pseudo video gamey, like he had that very sort of like
90s
glossy,
very interesting texture.
Spectacular.
It's really cool to see that they did all of that, and then how their animations don't switch from universe to universe. It doesn't seem like which is interesting because. I mean, I know Marvel and Sony aren't really working together with multiverse stuff, but in Doctor Strange, they did kind of switch animations from universe to universe just for that brief instance, but they could always...
and Strange sort of turned into whatever their universe looked like when they went through it. Yeah.
Right. So I'm curious if that's going to play into anything or if it just, whatever. It is what it is.
That's an interesting thing, yeah.
Yeah, but as far as like them going from universe to universe, it was really cool to see the different types of animations and then them also like... going into the realm of Who Framed Roger Rabbit in the I have to say Donald Glover being in it was insanely cool, but also like beg the question, okay, animation and live action coexist.
So I heard a story about that evidently there was going to be more live action intercut into the film.
There was quite a bit,
but even as much as we got is I guess way less than they originally planned to do, or maybe even filmed for the movie.
Gotcha.
And they had to scrap some because they felt like it was
too much.
It was Uncanny Valley too much, or it was just sort of discordant or sort of weird to look at the two things together, like Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
So they just used it in a kind of a jokey, sort of very
fun way.
Yeah.
Which I think they did in a really good way. Everyone coming into this movie knew there was going to be cameos galore.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't like just overwhelming, like, hey, here's another cameo. Hey, you're getting a little bored? Here's one more cameo just to keep you interested. It was like, no, here's our like section of cameos, but the overall film was just spectacular.
And we've talked about cameos before and how they can be done well and they can be done poorly. And a lot of the cameos in this film were either just visual gags with like no explanation of who that character was. Like if you're a deep lore nerd, you might be able to pull out a few dozen different spider variations from a quick, blink and you'll miss it sort of background shot.
Yeah.
But the ones that matter to the story, they got opportunity to see screen time. I mean, like Spider UK and Spider India. Both were in the movie for really not that long, all things being equal. But they still felt like they got character development.
Yeah,
like they
absolutely.
both had moments that felt like they were really, really cool.
Yeah. Same with like Spider-Punk.
Yes.
I was never actually a fan of him in the comics just because he was like the edginess that he is in this movie, but not like the cool edgy to where like
he was so cool.
He's like, dang it. Like, yeah, you're really cool, but you're also like really edgy with it. Yeah, I just felt like it was all edge, no cool in the comics.
Sure.
So I'm really happy to see this one to be like, wow, you're awesome.
Well, and cool. Hobie in the comics was in like one of the Edge of Spider-Verses for like 16 pages maybe. Yeah. And that's a lot of the character development that he had other than being in like Web Warriors for a little while and being in the, incidentally around other storylines. But like proper development didn't, because they do a lot of world building for him, so proper development didn't really come along.
Exactly.
In this movie, they didn't really care about doing his world development that much because they onboarded us instantly with that he comes from this world and this kind of thing, the whole comic book laying on the stack sort of thing.
Yeah.
So they can instead just be like, he gets to be cool, have cool one-liners, and show up and do badass shit.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Which, you brought up the comic thing, which they brought back to this, but it didn't feel like, in the last movie, it kind of felt like by the end, it was like maybe a smidge repetitive, but in a good way because they even blended it in with that.
Right.
I think they did that perfectly with this movie again, where they blended like, oh, let's take it back just one more time, but it felt better. It felt like you know what you're seeing right now.
Yeah.
We'll just get through it kind of thing.
The intro sequences were also quite long. Like that that like opening before the credits with Gwen was 15 minutes or more. Like it was a decent chunk of time, beautifully animated, but a decent chunk of time just with Gwen and understanding where she is at now, why she's the way she is now, what her whole life is like. Because we only saw her as a sort of drifter in the last film. We didn't really get her life and her universe that much. Yeah. So that was really cool.
It was cool to see. And it was cool to see the pickup from like where she was and where she's at now, and then right to the end of Spider-Verse to where she opens the portal and be like, hey, Miles. Yeah. And like then catch up to where that's at.
Exactly.
So I like to see like, exactly where we're left off from film to film. Which, that's really another.
Good. It's really good.
I might have to switch my answer. I might say like my favorite part about this wasn't the animation, but the fact that they were able to blend both films so seamlessly, and it doesn't feel like sequel-itis, to where it's like, oh, we're pulling another sequel out of this one. It was like, no, this felt like necessary.
Yeah.
Whether it's like the spot or how he was introduced and like how he was created as a person.
Sure.
Or even Spider 42, where like that, even like he was glitching, like the spider was glitching in the first one, and that ties heavily into this one,
which we thought was simply just an animation, throwaway kind of visual motif design kind of choice. And now we're given to understand that's and part of that has probably got to be, like
them trying.
Well, them also just sort of recontextualizing things that they did as sort of like subtle nods in the first film.
Yeah.
Maybe that didn't mean anything in the first film.
Yeah, but they made it mean something.
But they made it mean something, and it wasn't stupid when they made it mean something. Mm-hmm. They just built on all these good subtle references.
Yeah.
And also, this is again to your earlier point, the internal mythology of this movie has a lot of referencing to the Spider-Verse comic series.
Yeah.
But it's really kind of its own thing.
Mm-hmm. I think it took everything that I loved about like the Into the Spider-Verse or the Spider-Verse comic that we're like discussing.
Yeah.
I think it took all the great elements and like emphasized those.
Yeah.
Really like what makes a spider person a spider person.
Right.
And that's the tragedy to be able to understand the responsibility of your powers.
Yeah.
And that was so heavy into this film. And like that's where I thought was really cool with the cameos. That wasn't just a cameo like, oh, look, there's more spider people. It was like, no, here's the spider people that suffered due to that.
Yeah.
And then implemented this film.
Yeah, so let's unpack that. I mean, we did a Spider-Verse video on the channel about the comic book version of Spider-Verse, a sort of like grand arc of the Spider-Verse comic interpretation of the story, which has more to do with the mythology of the web and kind of where the totem powers come from.
Right.
Which this movie really didn't touch on very much.
No, because it's complicated and it's not gonna lie, boring.
It is a little boring.
Like it's just boring. You just get lost in the weeds.
The video's not boring, but the concept is boring.
Well, yeah, just because like there's so much to unpack. There's so much to like, oh, this happens because of this and this. It's just so big. Versus this one's a lot more condensed. My favorite thing about that comic was that there was one spider group and another spider group that had different ideals. They were
opposed.
Exactly. And it was more like moral codes of like, hey, if we permanently ended this problem, it would end the problem. But then the other group was like, no, that's not what spider people do. That's not what we're about.
Yeah.
And this movie took that and like ran with it. And I loved it.
Absolutely. And they did it in a very inventive way. Obviously, the moral conundrum in the Spider-Verse comic was Dr. Otto Octavius's mind in Peter's body. Superior Spider-Man wanted to kill the Inheritors because they represent a clear and present danger to the web and all the spider totems. And Peter and all the people that feel that way don't want to kill them because Spider-Man doesn't kill.
Exactly.
That's the sort of moral conundrum in the comic book version. Mm-hmm. And in this film, it's less a I want to kill you thing, because that's not what Miguel and the other Spider Society people are saying. Mm-hmm. It's more like I want to allow for natural death and sacrifice to occur because it'll preserve the greater good. Yeah. The greater multiverse.
Exactly.
And Miles is like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I need to have the ability to have choice, and I need to be able to try and do both.
Yeah.
The problem is, in the Spider-Verse one, the comic book version, you can kind of tell Superior Spider-Man is just dumb. Like, you don't kill people. Even if they're bad people, you try and save them. Because you're a superhero. That's what you do.
Yeah.
But in this movie, they present both sides as being
pretty equal.
And neither one is like clearly the winner over the loser. Like, you look at Miles and you go, Miles is young.
Yeah.
He has a young person's perspective on ethics and morality and the sort of grand multiversal tapestry.
Sure.
Is he making a foolish choice from lack of wisdom, lack of context?
Perhaps.
Or is Miguel embittered and using unreliable information from his own anecdotal evidence to suggest that this is the only course of action that's true, and he's overwhelmingly willing to sort of push everyone else into his way of thinking, and now Miles is like, no, you could totally do something else.
Which plays into his, like, Miguel's theory in the first place that Miles was like an outlier. He was never meant to be. So Miles can use that and be like, yeah, I wasn't. So I can do whatever I want. I'm not one of you.
Right.
And it actually really shows in that movie too, how he's able to outwit hundreds of thousands of Spider-Man because he does think just a little differently, or just a little, like, looks at something.
He's also kind of a singularity too. It's a little bit unique. We're to find out is that all the other Spider people are sort of like
have the same powers.
Yeah, and they're also very endemic to their realm because it's supposed to be like a chosen spider person for each individual, skein in the web, thread or whatever. And Miles is unique. He's a person from one universe with the web powers of somebody from a different universe, and that gives him some kind of weird proto-anomaly kind of quality.
Right, and yeah, I thought it was just implemented so well in this one. So, okay, if we're talking about cameos, which it seems like is a big deal in this one,
sure.
Do you have like a favorite that you're just like, wow, cool to see? That was awesome.
Favorite cameo?
Because we got the live actions. We got the Andrew Garfield one, which held on for a bit. We had Tobey Maguire, which was more just like a image kind of thing in the back. Again, so well done.
I mean, it's hard to deny Donald Glover's cameo as being really cool.
Because no one expected that one.
No one expected that one. And it sort of facilitates this idea that if they do Spider-Man 4 with Holland in the future, and they want to try and pull in more Spider-Verse type stuff, they could theoretically get Glover to play Prowler in that film.
Oh, I'm sure he really, really wants to.
Well,
because I know he was so big about wanting to be Miles Morales for a long time.
That's the reason why we have Miles Morales.
Yeah.
Is because of Donald Glover. And for those of you that don't know, the reason why Miles Morales exists, according to internet pop culture, which is what we sell here, is...
According to us.
According to us and a lot of people on the internet. Anyway.
Sure.
The reason why we have Miles Morales is because on an episode of Community, Donald Glover was wearing Spider-Man pajamas.
In season 4.
In season 4, and people were overwhelmingly positively receiving of that particular image and that kind of idea, and they said, why don't we do a thing with Donald Glover as Spider-Man? And it didn't work out. It didn't really ever happen. Not until many, many years later when he did a voice role on an animated cartoon or whatever.
Yeah.
But so comic authors at the time who were doing the Ultimates universe ran with it, and they made Miles Morales, which is sort of a very, very not subtle nod.
Yeah.
Because in that Ultimates universe, a lot of the characters were taken from real world people. Sam Jackson was obviously the creative inspiration for Nick Fury, and there are other ones you could look to as well.
Pinpoint for sure.
So we got Miles because of Donald Glover, and then to see him in the movie as Prowler was just kind of a cool cool little thing.
Not our first time seeing him in the Spider-Verse movies, though. He was in the last one too. That exact scene that you're talking about with his Spider-Man pajamas was in the TV of, I think, like Aaron's apartment or something.
That's true.
So that's a cool nod. So it really shows that, like, Donald Glover has this weird connection with Miles Morales. Yeah. And it's being homaged in this, so I love that.
What about you? What's your favorite cameo?
I mean, I love that they brought back a few. I have to see it again. I need to see it a second time because there's so much I need to see again. But Spectacular Spider-Man was really cool to see. Yeah. Hearing his voice again was really awesome. They really paid a lot of homage to that character because they did, like, he was actually there. He was in a different scene as well. And then then they showed the actual, like, history of his Uncle Ben too, which was really cool. Yeah. They had Spider-Man Unlimited, which was really cool. I need to see it again. My friend told me that the 90s Spider-Man was in it. I didn't see him.
I'm sure he's one of those blink and you'll miss it visual motif kind of cameos. I saw, just off the top of my head, I saw the sort of Scarlet Spider, like Iron Spider suit from Civil War. I saw when Peter made the sort of like silvery sort of iron armor when he was fighting the Rose and Kingpin and Dragon Man. Okay. I saw... Spider Side. I saw multiple multi-armed Spider-Men from different things. Like, I'm not even that well versed in all the different canon versions of Spider-Man.
We got Spider T-Rex. That was cool. We got the 60s Spider-Man with the swing. The swing was so cool.
Canned animations. So good.
Wow. That is insane to see. Yeah. So funny. I don't know. I'm sure there was a Spider Cat because that's a thing. Because he landed on Miles' face. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. One thing I don't think we did get, because we didn't get Venom, but we got the Venom verse, which is
and we saw some Venoms also in one of the sort of canon events, right? When they were in the room looking at all the different sort of like nodes where all the different lines of the web come together and form those hexagons, because Marvel's big on hexagons. One of those like nodes was, because one of them is for Uncle Ben dying, one of them is for whatever. One of those nodes had symbiotes in it.
Oh, cool.
So they at least visually alluded to the Venom symbiote in the movie.
That's cool. Okay, I love that.
But none of them actually had symbiote suits on them, though.
That's a good point.
Which is interesting. None of the Spider-Man we saw, 201, had a symbiote suit on them.
Maybe because it is like a tentpole kind of thing, where it's like you have to endure the symbiote to, again, learn that life lesson a second time, because that is kind of like another like tentpole of Spider-Man. Yeah. You lose a loved one of some sort. You learn the responsibility of that, and then you go on, and then you take this power, and then you get ego control from the symbiote, and then you learn that lesson.
Learning experience for him.
Absolutely. Yeah, you learn that again because you're like, okay, my ego got too big from these powers. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe that could be just something that every Spider person has to deal with, which would be interesting.
That would be interesting. That would be interesting.
Go
ahead.
Or I don't know, maybe they just didn't want to do symbiote stuff because of Spider-Man 2, which is also in this movie.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So maybe they're just holding off all the symbiotes for that game and just kind of waiting. But
it's fascinating too, because Sony owns the rights to all of that stuff, and this is a Sony-led picture. Yeah. So
that's
it's carte blanche for them to do it if they wanted to. It's kind of funny they didn't have any black suit Spider-Mans or any obvious sort of Venomverse Spider-Mans or anybody.
Or Tom Holland Spider-Man. Which is, I'm guessing, is because it's made by Sony.
Mutually, I think those movies anyway, I think are mutually owned.
So I think they probably had to strike some deal if they wanted to. Probably. And they're like, we don't need to. We have enough right now, which is true. But they did have like homages to like, they had Alfred Molina's Doc Ock saying like, hello, Peter.
They did.
I think they had one. Well, they referenced Doctor Strange. And,
they did, yeah.
So they definitely
and they also referenced the sort of timeline too. Before the web shows up, Miguel's going through his whole like, Lila, do the thing and give us all the exposition dump. Yeah. They made that sort of 3D holographic version of the sort of the sacred timeline thing appearing. Mm-hmm. This was kind of more vertical, and then from that the web kind of came out of it.
To the tree.
So they're trying their best, I think, in this film to sort of tie it to the Marvel things, even if it isn't really a kind of a co-production.
Yeah, and it works well enough, in my opinion. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to be too picky about it, especially with these really cool concepts we're getting.
Absolutely.
So, happy about that. I'm also really happy about one of my favorite characters,
here he comes.
Spot. actually getting some recognition, real cool recognition too.
I thought you were going to say Ben Reilly, but the Spot, yes, I completely agree.
Yeah, Ben Reilly. I mean, I had to take his with a grain of salt because it was like
a joke role.
It was a joke role, which was a bit of a bummer. I wish he had a little bit more. Which we have another movie, so we'll see.
I get you.
But
the Spot though, yeah,
that was really cool because they did take his jokeness of a character and be like, what if we play on that?
Yeah, we embrace it, and then we make him into a real threat.
Real threat because he's being made into a joke, and he gets annoyed by that.
Yeah.
Which I love. It's really cool. I had a DVD of the 90s Spider-Man, and all the episodes were like Green Goblin except for one, which was the Spot episode. And I loved it. I thought it was really cool. I thought he was a cool character. So to see him like on this scale now was awesome. And especially well done. Well done.
He's one of those characters that comes along in comic books every once in a while whose power is like at the same time super practical and like really powerful, but it's used in such a oftentimes goofy or like funny manner.
Yeah,
like the DC has a character like this that was introduced in a Batman comic called Onomatopoeia.
Okay.
Have you heard of this character?
No.
So his power, he was invented by Kevin Smith, and so he's like the Spot in such a way that his power is like weird. But if you think about it, and you're a writer in a room trying to make a movie about it, you could make a logical extension of that power that becomes very powerful. Onomatopoeia's power is in the English language, and onomatopoeia is the written word for a sound. So bang for a gun. Onomatopoeia, the character can say bang and a gunshot happens.
Oh my Lord.
Right. It's an interesting concept
so cool.
for a character. It's oftentimes used in such a way like Condiment Man, who doesn't have that same luxury of being able to go in a direction that could become catastrophic.
Right.
But it's used in a way that's kind of like somewhat playful or more interesting or kind of fun. But if you think about it, like Spot, and you go, I want to make a movie about onomatopoeia becoming a credible villain. What if he says, what if the word of a thermonuclear detonation becomes an onomatopoeia, and he can say that? Or what if he's able to say something that would allow him to open a hole in reality or something?
Exactly.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what they did with Spot.
Take him more seriously.
Yeah.
Or like usually like characters like this, like let's take like Electro, or actually let's take Shocker.
Sure.
Shocker is just a dumb person in a way. Like that is kind of his character, but he has pretty strong powers. And if he was I don't know. I would say like more intelligent, or if he uses powers more interesting, that he could be more of a threat.
He certainly punches below his weight class for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where the Spot was at. And now it's like, oh no, like if you piss him off enough, he could actually use his powers for incredible like circumstances.
Yeah.
Which they tied in again so well to Into the Spider-Verse for that power, and especially where his powers came from.
Right.
And then having the collider be a big thing. Like not just a thing that was in the first movie and then just forgotten about.
Right. And they even go to the place where the collider was, and you sort of see what's happened to it afterwards when Miles and the Spot and his dad are all in the kind of the same area.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the internal consistency of the storytelling, the mythology that they've built. They don't forget they've done something simply because it's not useful to them anymore. Yeah. Everything informs something else, which informs something else, which informs something else. And that's really smart writing.
Yeah, it's good storytelling.
Yeah.
And we can say they tried on this one.
Yeah, we can say they tried on this one.
So that's awesome. But I will mention Scarlet Spider since we didn't really talk about him. He's my favorite. So it was cool to see him. I was happy he had like a bigger role than like other Spider people. He could
bigger role, but I get what you mean. Yeah,
I would say he had the small. Maybe Spider-Bite Spider-Bite had a better role than him. He had the smallest big role as a Spider person.
That's fair.
Still great to see him. He
was certainly comic relief, if nothing else. Yeah, Spider-Bite was able to sort of help Miles at the very, very end by not resetting the program that allowed him to go away, which arguably put him in worse position than would have otherwise. But she saw just that bare crack in the facade of my favorite Spider, Miguel O'Hara.
Really?
Spider-Man 2099. I like 2099 Spider-Man quite a bit. I mean, I guess he's not my favorite over like traditional Spider-Man. Or even Peter B. Parker, but like of the other Spider-Mans, the non-traditional Spider-Mans, I like him the most.
Okay.
He also represents in this movie a very different kind of character than a lot of the other Spider people do.
Indeed.
Not the least of which is he feels as though he's suffered, I think, more than other Spider people have because he's further in his chronology than other people are.
I see what you're saying.
So he's kind of at the forefront, the vanguard of Peter Parker suffering, even though he isn't a Parker, and looking backwards and going, don't get to where I'm at. Or do get to where I'm at, but don't let it happen don't let the worst possible outcome of the universe being destroyed happen.
Right.
Suffer the small indignities of being a Spider-Man. Don't suffer the worst thing of trying to change everything and making it all worse.
Yeah. It's
funny. The message of the movie is a very profound concept when you really think about it. It's the idea of like, what does it mean? Like, what does it mean to grow up? What does it mean to acquire wisdom? What does it mean to really understand truth? Like, can you take someone's word for something? Even Miles says it in the film. He said, how can you trust what an algorithm says?
Yeah.
Because that's all they really have is anecdotal evidence and what Lila has projected will happen if canon events are disrupted.
Yeah.
Is that really true? It's hard to tell.
Yeah. I don't know. I played the Spider-Man 2 video or the Spider-Man Miles Morales video game.
Sure.
I know what happens in that game. So I feel like I know what's going to happen.
Okay.
But it's tough. It's tough to deal with that fact. And then like I can see where Miles is coming from. Again, the brilliance of this movie of like knowing what has to happen and then saying, no, I don't. What if we just didn't?
Right.
And so
But we have to remember though, Peter says that a lot.
It's true.
In his life. Peter's whole life has been, I want to be with Mary Jane. I want to be able to have a job. I want to be able to have a life outside of being Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. He wants to have, as Miles puts it, his cake and eat it too. He wants to have 2 cakes. Yeah. And it seems so easy when you're so young to just go, oh, we'll bake 2 cakes and you can have both. Mm-hmm. But in reality, Peter B. Parker, which is all ostensibly standing in for our Peter Parker, says and articulates the same things we would say to somebody who's really young, looking up, going, why does it have to be unfair? And Peter says, because it is.
You can kind of see that in the Spider-Man India. Like, if you see, like, him as a character versus, like, the rest of the Spider people who've kind of gone through the tragedy.
Right.
He hadn't. And he kind of had, like,
he seems very new to being Spider-Man, too. Yeah.
Bit of a chip on his shoulder of, like, this is great. This is awesome. I have no problems. I have great hair. So, like...
And he also doesn't have a problem because Miles averted a potential, like, growth moment for him.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden did a disruptive thing. It's kind of funny.
Which I think is going to, like... I don't know. I think if, like, you don't have that, then you become too egotistical with your powers. So, like, this is going to be a deep pull. But back in the 90s Spider-Man show, they did a Spider-Verse 2 episodes. In one of the episodes, there was a Spider Armor clone, and he didn't have, like, any tragedy. He didn't have an Uncle Ben loss in that one.
Right.
And because of that, he got really egotistical. He got, like, Peter Parker is a smart person. He used that to his advantage, got super rich off of it, and now he has, like, an Iron Man / Spider-Man, like, armor.
Sure.
The first Spider armor in it. And in that story, that was his crutch. Is his ego, and like that's what kind of like made him lose in that episode.
I get you, yeah.
And so I'm curious if that concept is what they're really trying to play into with this one. Like they do need to have that.
It's kind of what Peter was explaining to Miles when they were in that like subterranean sort of like factory looking place. He's like, yeah, bad things are going to happen, and you haven't experienced them yet, so you're going to mourn the experiences you're going to have. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be scary to think about the fact you're going to have to suffer. But at the same time, a lot of good things are going to happen too. You're going to save a lot of people. Yeah. You're going to have great experiences in your life still. It's not all going to be bad. It's going to be a few terrible things that happen, but it's going to avert catastrophe in the future. It feels to me like a parent talking to a kid about the fact that you're going to experience things in your life you don't want to. Yeah. And there's nothing you can do about it. But it's not fair, but you're going to have to just learn to live with it.
And just deal with it. Which is so cool to see that Peter B. Parker grow from that.
Yeah, I know.
Because like we were talking about this of like, oh, where's Peter going to be? Like Peter B. Parker, where's he going to be in his life? And it seems like he has grown, but he still has I think I could see some things that he still needs to grow to.
Absolutely.
He's still not perfect.
Yeah.
He's still like, did he take Mayday with him?
Yes.
He did?
He took Mayday with him.
Yeah,
he took Mayday with him everywhere.
Yeah. See, Peter, look.
And he even told MJ
he wasn't.
I wouldn't do that.
So that's where he's like, all right, Peter, you're not perfect again.
How cute was Mayday in that movie, though?
She was actually really good. Yeah,
oh, my
she
gosh.
was really cute.
So
I love Mayday.
Before Ultimates was a thing, this is just a brief aside. Before Ultimates was even a glimmer in Mark Miller's eye, there was M2. which was sort of like Marvel's attempt at doing what if if Marvel had advanced like 20 years into the future.
Oh, okay.
This is post 2099, but before Ultimates was a thing. 2099 was what if we were 107 years in the future, because it started in 1992, and everything was barely recognizable to what it was like now. And M2 was like, let's just dial the clock forward like 20 years.
Yeah. So like everyone's experience, might have families or
exactly.
Something like that.
So Peter and MJ were married, and they had a daughter, May Parker, or Mayday, and the M2 stuff was just like with, I think, 2099. It was sort of interesting as for like a novelty, and then I think over time people stopped kind of paying attention to it and reading it. A lot of the sort of ancillary stuff kind of got canceled first, and then I think the Spider-Girl stuff sort of went away as well. And she was sort of relegated to just sort of being a footnote in Marvel's history for a long time. And then Spider-Verse rolled around.
Yeah.
And I think she probably had some sporadic appearances before that. But Spider-Verse rolled around, and they were like, oh, doors open, all the Spider stuff, come on in.
Yeah, straight up.
And I think a whole new generation of people got to see May Parker, and they were like, this character is really cool.
She is.
And I'm happy that kind of thing has happened, because everything old becomes new again. And this character is pretty interesting. And now we're getting to see another new interpretation of the character in Peter B. Parker.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
I'm really excited for the door that does open to all these opportunities.
Yeah.
Because I think Sony said, like, by the success of this movie, we're like, yeah, you're going to get live action Miles Morales. You're going to get a live action Spider-Gwen. And I enjoy that. I'm really happy we are. I hope they're done well.
Yeah, me too.
But like, I am happy for just the avenue of things we can go down. Like, even not live action, more animated, just like different Spider-Verse people, or just different stories that can be implemented to show that, like, not Peter Parker is the only Spider-Man we can do, or like 616 Peter. There can be a different rendition of Peter that will probably service the fans. So I hope that goes more into it.
I trust that Sony, like Disney, can give the right creative team an opportunity to be really good. But a lot of times they, at least in my estimation, they can interfere in some ways that, let's just say I have beef with Sony.
Yeah, you said you trust Sony. I don't trust Sony for a minute.
Well, what I mean
these
is,
are miracles is what they're performing right now.
Historically, Sony has done some these are the clock is the broken clock is right twice a day, right? Like when that minute hand hits a certain number, it's still technically correct.
Yeah, it's Morbius, Venom 2. Oh, Spider-Verse. Okay, we're going back into Craven now.
I'm with you. I'm completely with you.
So we'll see what happens.
I mentioned beef because I want to talk about another historic beef.
Yeah.
Vin Diesel and The Rock.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So these two legendary tough guys in the cinematic landscape have elected to bury their beef. And while we saw the subtle allusion to that at the end of Fast 10 when Hobbs sort of made his return, evidently we're getting another Hobbs movie. And Hobbs is going to be a big part of the franchise going forward again.
Yeah.
What is going on with these people?
Well, yeah, it makes sense because, like, The Rock isn't the way he was. The last 3 movies he's done, just all We had Red Notice, we had Jungle Cruise, and now we had Black Adam.
That's true.
3 movies that were just And that's going to say something to Hollywood at this point. They're like, hey, look, Dwayne, like you can't hold your own movie apparently anymore as you used to be able to do. So, and he's like, okay, I might have to go back to the well on this one.
It's funny because if you think about it, in my estimation, I'm not confident he's been really ever able to hold his own movie that well. I'm looking at you, San Andreas, Rampage.
Well, I mean, Jumanji.
But see, Jumanji to me it felt like he was in an ensemble.
He definitely was in an ensemble.
Karen Gillan, Jack Black,
and
Kevin
then
Hart.
his boy Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
Which I mean, that is actually a good point. Maybe that's what studios saw. Like, oh, you can hold these movies, but he's like, actually, he had Kevin. You couldn't see him, but Kevin Hart was there.
Kevin Hart was there.
So like,
I think Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, big fan of the podcast, is he's a big fan. Is a great actor when he's able to play off somebody that has either mismatched or very similar energy to the way he does. So like obviously Hobbs and Shaw, Deckard and Hobbs were both very similar in their like intense machismo, very big bravado. And so they had that rivalry kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But then he and Ryan Reynolds play off each other. And while Red Notice isn't a particularly great movie, Ryan Reynolds is obviously not a physical type character, but he's like a savvy, sort of like charismatic rogue type with a charm that he plays off well as sort of a straight man. And that kind of works really well. So I think he plays off other people really well.
Yeah.
When he's trying to hold a film by himself as the like emotional or funny center. He was in that Skyscraper movie, man. That movie sucked.
Yeah, I don't think the guy has too much range in order to like hit all those beats, which is unfortunate. But I guess he's going to be back at that family barbecue.
Yeah.
But Matt, you can't have a family barbecue without a little beef. And so with that beef, there's a little bit more with Vin Diesel and Jason Momoa.
Oh, right. I heard about this.
Yes, because you can't have it. You have to have a little bit in there.
More beef.
So Vin Diesel has a problem with Jason Momoa because apparently Jason Momoa was too charismatic, entertaining.
Oh, so too good.
Yeah, I mean, he was the apparent. Still haven't seen the movie. I don't care to.
Yeah.
But apparently he was the best part of the movie. All the clips I have seen of him in it were entertaining.
Yeah.
They were dumb, but they're entertaining.
Sure.
And I think that's like the best we can hope for from these movies. Vin Diesel was not entertained by that.
Of course not. Because his movie franchise.
I know. And so I guess like Jason Momoa was too big and too verbose and people liked him too much. And that's a problem for Vin, which is weird because like you shouldn't have set him up for your 3-part movie villain.
Yeah, why'd you approve the script? Why'd you approve the casting? Why'd you approve the takes? You were there when he was acting this way.
Yeah.
If it's your film because you're the executive producer, well, put a stop to it then.
Maybe he was expecting audiences to not like him as much and be like less like, this guy's not great.
You got to give them something to offer. If you're hoping that this guy's going to torpedo himself, but your boat is also sinking. We have 2 sunk boats now, not one that miraculously just floats because the other one sunk faster.
Well, it doesn't matter if you don't notice your own boat sinking.
I guess so.
If you're like too worried about that boat over there. So
it's funny. Vin Diesel is not a stupid guy.
Mm-mm.
I've seen like acting tests of him when he was first starting out and getting out of like drama school.
Oh.
And he did a bunch of early performances in some films, like Boiler Room and stuff, that were really, really good.
Okay.
Like very different than what he does now.
Saving Private Ryan. He was really good in that movie.
Exactly. And now we're getting him from like that era where he had range, he had interest, he had intensity, he had funny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was like knockaround guys. He was moving into an area where he could have been something really interesting.
Yeah.
And then we get now the sort of like pseudo mushed mouth, big Michelin tire looking man. And I'm like, dude, why? Why'd you go this direction?
We're talking all this crap about Vin Diesel because we know he hates our podcast.
Yeah, we know.
That's why Dwayne loves us.
Yeah.
Choose one or the other.
Beefs, you know.
But no, I totally agree with you about just Vin not doing anything different with any of his performances. They're so locked in. But maybe that's the crutch he kind of put himself in. Like this is Dom Toretto. This is exactly who his character is. He can't grow from that because there's 10 movies of solid performance of this person.
So what you're saying is they planted the seed so deep that it can't sprout. Toretto can never change, never grow, never become something different.
I think that's what he sees. That's what I say.
It's an acting choice.
I'm saying as a directing choice, you could still make that happen, especially
fair.
towards the end of the series where growth happens.
That's fair.
Maybe he doesn't see it that way.
I don't know.
So we're getting another movie. So initially when we first saw Fast 10, we were getting 2. Fast 10 Part 1 and Part 2. But now we're getting a third. And now we're getting a Hobbs movie between that one. So now we have four movies now but to end this series. And I can only imagine between Part 2 and Part 3, we're going to have a Shaw movie because we can't have Hobbs without Shaw, but we can't have Hobbs and Shaw. So we have to have Hobbs or Shaw. So now we have Hobbs.
Well, it's going to be the Shaw family movie, right? It's going to be Luke Evans and Jason Statham and Vanessa Kirby and Helen Mirren and the whole Shaw clan's going to be in that movie.
I hope
then we're going to get a movie with Han and the resurrected Giselle.
Could. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's got to be a spinoff. Then we're going to get a movie with Lucas Black and Han because it's going to be the sequel to Tokyo Drift.
Yeah.
12 years later.
It could. I hope the Shaw movie isn't called Shaw. I hope it's called Ann Shaw. Because it's Hobbs and Shaw. So I think it'd just be Ann Shaw.
Just cut Hobbs out.
Yeah. But have the and in there.
Got it.
And just so no one's confused. But
man, that sucks.
I am just impressed on how much how much a studio is able to be like, yeah, throw another movie in there. Like they're okay with this.
I mean, we hate them, but people see them. They make money.
Apparently not in America right now. Apparently,
really?
Apparently in America they're not doing great, but overseas, yeah, they're still seeing them. So
well,
overseas, not a big fan of our podcast. But
we don't transmit over there, so
it's okay.
They're throwing rocks from across the pond.
Another franchise that isn't wanting to die is John Wick, which is unfortunate too.
Apparently, I like John Wick though.
Yeah, but he died, and
he
so
did
should
die.
the franchise.
He did die. Spoilers for John Wick 4.
Yeah,
he did die.
But maybe not.
Because they've announced John Wick 5.
Yeah.
And the continuing of the franchise ad infinitum.
Mm-hmm.
Evidently, according to the quarterly earnings call for Legendary Entertainment, or Lionsgate, the company that distributes John Wick, they made so much money that they've said that we're going to have a regular cadence of John Wick going forward.
Like James Bond. Like
James Bond.
In a way where it's just like, oh yeah, we're just going to have these movies now.
Right.
But the problem with James Bond the thing that works with James Bond versus John Wick is James Bond doesn't usually have a continuous story thread between all the movies.
True. That was a pretty uncommon thing. And even then it was sort of subtleties between movies more recently with the sort of Daniel Craig stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even those are still like, some of them can still kind of live on their own.
Sure.
John Wick is definitely not the same.
It's a big old saga, that's for sure.
So I don't know how they're going to be able to implement that.
Yeah, I don't know.
But John Wick is such a good example of like a standalone movie that was really good, and then they're like, no, let's just market and franchise the heck out of it because
more.
Yeah, because
more.
John Wick 1 was solid, and it was a solid movie to the beginning and end, and you could end it there and it'd be great.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that. And they just kept going, and they're going to continue to go, and they're doing okay right now. The
disappointing thing is they could have ended it, and it would have been a satisfying conclusion at 1. It would have been a satisfying conclusion at 4. It is a satisfying conclusion at the end of 4.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good ending.
Yeah,
it's a really good ending.
Yeah, solid ending.
What the hell are they going to do to John Wick now? Is it going to be a Nick Fury, like, surprise I didn't really die thing? It's all a big joke?
But then why is he coming back? Wasn't that his whole point, to get out? I
know. Why would you just... It's like a kid swimming that doesn't know how to swim. They just finally manage dog paddle their way back to the dock. They climb out of the swimming pool. They're sputtering for air, and they're happy to be on dry land again. And you go... You know what? It was pretty funny when you were dog paddling around, and you just push him into the water again.
You forgot something. Go get it. Yeah. So it just okay. We'll see. I mean, I'm pretty against this, if I'm gonna be honest. Like, even if they do it well, it's just like okay, but the action becomes stale after a minute, like after a while.
Yeah.
John Wick 3 to me was pretty boring because all it was action. It was good action. But there was no stakes. There was nothing keeping me drawn to watch it besides the visuals.
John Wick 3 was also the boring one for me too. Yeah. I thought 4 was pretty exceptional, but 3 just didn't hit.
And 2 just piggybacked so well off the first one that I was still able to give it a pass.
Right.
But it was still, again, the exact same thing of just cool action, no stakes, no progression in the story.
2 also had a weird shift in tone too. Like the beginning of 2
felt
normal. like the denouement for 1. Like it was sort of like the coda of the first film.
It was.
And then they sort of like did almost a hard stop, and then surprise, you're not done. We're going to bring you into this whole kind of world again for one last job thing. You're like, okay, I can kind of swallow this still.
Sure.
One last job sort of a thing. And then that one ended, and you're like, okay, cool. 2 could be over now.
Mm-hmm.
Except that now you're persona non grata, and we're going to make this huge bounty against you, and then 3 is going to be you basically trying to run around and avoid being killed the entire film. Non-stop action the entire time. Yeah.
And just having everybody have really nice suits that are also bulletproof.
So the decision is made. It's out of our hands. They're going to do a 5, and they're going to do probably a 6 and a 7 and a 10. What's their choices? What are they going to do now?
Well, they did do TV shows. We're going to have a few of those based off like the hotel.
The Continental, right?
Yeah, the Continental. Yeah. But then they did announce a video game. It seems very cool.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So like that is one aspect where I'm like, perfect. John Wick is about killing multiple people like all the time.
True.
Very like just action video game-esque. That would work perfect for a video game.
That would work perfect for a video game.
Because that's what you do in a lot of those games. Third-person shooters, like that's what you do. You go around. At least it fits for this character.
It does.
And it would look good. It reminds me a lot of like Hitman, but like more action.
That's what I was going to say. Do you want it to be like Doom or like Hitman?
I'd say, well, Hitman is already working on the new James Bond game, which sounds perfect.
Sure.
Because that would be perfect for a James Bond game.
Yeah.
So I would say like in the the visual style of Hitman, but I'd say more of the like gameplay of Doom.
Got it.
Because it needs
a little
to be
more action focused.
It should be. Because John Wick isn't more stealthy unless it is stealth takedowns.
Yeah, I don't know. John Wick for me, like you, I think is perfect for a video game.
Yeah.
He's appeared in a video game before, twice in fact, as guest characters.
Okay.
One was in Fortnite, which is mostly just a skin.
Woo.
And then the other one was they did a tie-in for Payday 2.
Oh.
Overkill, which is a Swedish company, made a heist sort of shooter type game, and they did a tie-in for John Wick. They also did a tie-in for Hardcore Henry and Hotline Miami, and they did a Ron Perlman character that was not his guy from Sons of Anarchy, in name only.
Yeah.
But that kind of worked. It was like running around shooting people. They put his signature gun in there, and everybody in that game has masks, but instead he just has sunglasses because John Wick doesn't really wear anything.
Yeah.
So I could see a John Wick video game for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't really see any more John Wick movies. Now I know we got Ballerina coming.
Yeah.
And he's going to be in that, but Ballerina, my understanding, takes place between 3 and 4.
Sure. Okay.
So at least it's sort of like
it makes sense
to a way. If they did John Wick 5, 6, and 7, I don't necessarily need another trilogy of globe-trotting adventure.
Yeah.
Where he's, back into the whole mix again. I want like you've alluded to with 007, I want like episodic mini sort of John Wick arcs.
Yeah, if they wanted to go back in the past and talk about like...
Don't tell me where it is in the timeline. Just give me a cool story.
Yeah, tell me like... Or if you want to connect it, be like, hey, this is this character, this is how they met, or this is what they referenced to.
Yeah, that's true.
And then just do that. And then if they want to do like animated like John Wick, that would be cool.
That'd be interesting.
But otherwise, I prefer him to stay dead. Just like I prefer my Kamala Khans to stay dead.
What?
Spoilers.
That is dark.
Was that a good transition?
That was a good transition. But also, wow.
Sorry, I actually don't... I don't know. She's not going to stay dead. She has a movie.
No, of course she's not going to stay dead.
She has a movie coming out in a few months. She's going to come back.
That's true.
But we're talking about Amazing Spider-Man number 26?
26.
Where they killed off Kamala Khan.
What you're gracelessly talking about is the murder of Kamala Khan. Murder.
Yeah, it was a big like reveal that they killed off Kamala Khan. It was supposed to be Mary Jane, but apparently I didn't know this one. Kamala has shape-shifting abilities.
Yeah, that's kind of a lesser known power for sure. Mostly size changing, stretchy limbs. That's the kind of stuff that I know her for too.
Right, but shape-shifting is too convenient, so you have to forget about that one.
Yeah.
It's too powerful of a thing, so you just forget about it until you have to kill her
off. It's one
of
those like one movie powers, like when Superman pulled off a giant like plastic S from his chest in Superman 3.
Okay.
The Christopher Reeve Superman movie.
Sure.
Like, that's not a Superman power, or even one of his costume abilities. Yeah, forget about it. It's only in this movie.
Forget about it. Yeah. So Kamala apparently dies. It's a whole thing where they fake it out, where like they're trying to kill Mary Jane, and then Mary Jane dies, and then Peter's like, oh no. But then like when she dies, she switches back to Kamala, and then Mary Jane comes back and is like, hey, I'm actually over here. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I have, I guess, one chief concern, which is that if Miss Marvel wasn't as popular a character as she is, and she certainly is popular enough that she's had her own series for a number of years, a couple different volumes of it, because it may or may not run, contiguously forever, but she's had her own series for a little while. She also features in Marvel team-ups. She features in like, team books.
Yeah.
Like, she's a popular enough character. She also got a Disney Plus series, for crying out loud.
Right.
She's also an interesting and compelling character because she's a person of color. She has a unique ability set. She is that like sort of meta-referential type character where she sort of is aware of the world she lives in, but not in the way that like Deadpool is, where she's sort of like fourth wall breaking.
No, she's a super fan.
She's just a super fan, which is kind of fun.
Because we're one of her.
It acknowledges that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so unceremoniously killing her in somebody else's book.
That's what I'm saying.
Whew, that's not a good look.
No, it's not. Like, especially like they really helmed into it too. They like made it covers where it's like death cover or something like that.
Yeah.
And
all black, sort of like a morning cover. Yeah.
They really went into it, which is like, okay, no one cares. Did anyone care when Doctor Strange died last year?
No.
I think he's back now.
Yes.
Yeah. I bought that comic because I'm like, oh, he's gonna die, and no, whatever.
Doctor Strange has died 2 times in 10 years.
See, so like that's what I'm saying. There's no stakes here. It doesn't matter. Like no one cares, and it shows in the comics. I doubt these sales were anything crazy.
It's stunt stuff, man.
Sure.
I mean, ASM, the recent run of ASM has obviously been predicated on this huge soap opera-like storyline where the very first panels of ASM #1 was Peter in a freaking crater, like bawling into his own hands or screaming or something, and it's then like 6 weeks later or whatever, does that very like movie TV shows episode 1 pilot kind of a thing, and it's meant to
6 weeks later or earlier.
Later, I think. I don't remember.
Sure.
It's something to that effect.
Sure.
The idea is they're using a cinematic technique, which is like an inductive approach.
Yeah. Get you hooked real fast.
Well, the idea is with a deductive approach to something, they're giving you information, but they're not telling you how it fits together yet.
Right.
So that it's left to the smart people or the ones paying attention to go, aha, I figured it out before it even lands. Mm-hmm. With an inductive approach, they're not giving you all the information until they're ready to give it to you. You cannot figure it out.
Right.
And in movies, an inductive approach is meant to show you things in a very compartmentalized fashion because they want you to pay attention to certain things first. Mm-hmm. Usually it's done in openings for a film, and then it isn't carried forward in the rest of the film.
Yeah.
First 10 minutes, maybe. In the deductive concept of movie making, it's like a mystery. You're making red herrings, but at the same time, you're also giving actual clues. And if you're really paying attention or really good, you could have figured it out.
For sure.
But it would take a stratospheric level of intelligence like Sherlock Holmes to kind of do that, which is fine because you get that aha moment in the end. You go, oh, and that's kind of satisfying.
Exactly.
Inductive doesn't really do that. And the ASM thing, to me, reads as like an inductive thing. There is no way you could figure out what's going on. So when all the moments happen, it feels like a soap opera. It almost feels like they're just randomly writing it from week to week and there is no interconnectivity to it. It's probably not true.
Yeah.
But it feels that way.
I also don't like how they pull a really obscure, strong power for a character and then use that heavily in order to kill them or just to impact their just character in general.
Yeah.
Especially if it's just not like that is not like a power I ever knew Kamala had, let alone like they never implemented into the MCU. They never implemented it heavily into her character. They never did it in the Avengers game, that Marvel's Avengers game that everyone loved.
Yeah. They loved it.
Oh, man.
Big fan of the podcast.
Yeah, so like I just wish they kind of like did something else where they didn't just pull something from somewhere to be like, all right, this is how this works because this is the best we got. Especially when it's not going to even stick for, I don't know, even a year.
I don't like this storyline because it feels as though the writer of it, and I don't know this is fair to say, but it feels a little bit like the writer of the storyline is just saying, yo, dog, I hear about these other cool things from Marvel and other areas.
Yeah.
I want some of that in my thing too. And I'm going to just brute force it into happening. I don't care if I have to break internal logic or internal consistent or internal canon. Mm-hmm. Like the shape-changing thing is one thing, but also Mary Jane being alluded to as the Scarlet Woman.
Oh, right.
And being like a changer of some kind of event or whatever. Like that's Scarlet Witch. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you even doing?
The Scarlet Woman. That doesn't even sound good. That's just so strange to have that, especially like making Mary Jane more of a character like that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with like definitely like making her more interesting or just developing her in some way.
Sure.
But Mary Jane isn't like a superhero or super powered or even like important person in that way, in my opinion. And
especially not basically living in the shadow of an existing character that already has a lot of these monikers or sort of subtypes attached to them already. Like Scarlet Witch is sort of the de facto Scarlet pseudo-mystic type character.
Come up with a different adjective. Like they're so close already. Scarlet Woman, Scarlet Witch, SW. Like it's already so close. Just come up with something else.
I don't know. The Illusion Kids thing, the Raban thing, the like alternate universe, like super time thing. Like the Illusion Kid thing. I almost threw that away. That's also a Scarlet Witch storyline.
Yeah.
With her two kids.
Yeah.
That's so crazy, man.
I mean, I don't know. Like, it did upset a bunch of fans. I know I was talking to a lot of guys. They were like, I hated that when they did that. I was kind of happy when they went away. But I'm like, yeah, but we've seen this before.
Yeah.
So
I really don't want this to become a thing where, like with Scarlet Witch, you sort of allow for a door to be opened and closed once because it's kind of acceptable. Mm-hmm. Even X-Men kind of brooked with this a little bit with like Cable and Hope and some other characters like Rachel Summers. But like, don't keep giving us kids by saying here's your alternate Earth future kid that comes back.
Yeah.
That you now unapologetically love deeply, even though you're not really connected to that person in any meaningful way. But it's because the audience likes that character, and you don't want to lose the sales that potentially you would gain by keeping them in print.
Mm-hmm.
Like, dang, man.
Yeah, I don't know.
Comics have been soap operas forever, right? They're long-running storylines with a lot of plot holes and continuity issues that, I mean, we've talked about it in the past to great effect. I mean, Star-Lord is a great example of that.
Scarlet Spider is a great example.
Scarlet Spider is a great example of that. But, like, there's still some level of like basic canon interpretation of characters on a conceptual level.
For sure. And
to like take the snow globe and go, all right, everything's settled, but I don't like that. I'm going to shake it up, and everybody look at the snow globe.
It's different now.
It's different now.
It's the same, but different. Just make different characters then.
Yeah. I don't know.
Or just bounce someone off of like Scarlet Witch and just make them the Scarlet Woman, not Mary Jane, who's not even connected to Wanda. Yeah. Just have someone around Wanda connected, and then you can have
maybe who they really want is the Scarlet Witch, and they just misunderstood that Mary Jane isn't that person, and we're going to see Wanda show up later.
Maybe Kamala Khan comics aren't selling well, and the Amazing Spider-Man is, and so that's why they could do that.
But you alluded to this earlier. Marvel's comes out in July.
Yeah.
What?
I don't know. So weird. I mean, that might just try to bounce her back to be like, oh, she's alive again, like maybe in September.
Yeah.
That's a fast turnaround, but that's comics.
That is a fast turnaround. It's interesting too. We read an article when we were doing research for this episode that talked about the fact they may be trying to shake up her canon because the Inhumans thing didn't go over that well when put into live action. Obviously, the ABC Inhumans TV show was pretty poor.
Yeah.
But the subtle allusions to Inhumans have really kind of like fallen away since Disney acquired the rights back to their mutant term and all the X-Men characters. So they may be wanting to make Kamala a mutant instead of an Inhuman.
Okay, so do the Star-Lord thing where
if they kill the character, they can be like, oh, she was never actually an Inhuman, even though there's issues that show her in a Terrigen cocoon. She's always been a mutant, and that's what's going on. And have the Krakoa resurrection protocols bring her back to life or whatever.
Right.
Be kind of weird, but, whatever.
It bumps me out when they take so many references from MCU and just change their characters. Yeah. But that's the world we live in.
It's the world we live in.
Okay. Have we got any time to take out some trash?
Let's take out some trash.
Yeah,
yep, we got a little bit of time.
We do it? Okay. All right, taking out some trash. Robert Downey Jr. is coming back to the screen with a TV show that
on HBO Max too. Jump into the other streaming service from Disney.
I don't care.
I don't care either.
I don't care about this one. I don't know. It's a TV show where he's making like older cars into electric cars, which is a cool concept.
Yeah.
Which you referenced. That's what apparently Tony Stark did back in this comic.
It's kind of funny how life imitates art. In 2010. The Invincible Iron Man comic book did a thing where after Siege and Tony Stark suffered the public scrutiny of sort of falling from grace, he created Stark Reliant, which was the name of a car company that used the sort of arc reactor of the comic book world.
Sure.
Named slightly differently, but same kind of deal. And it was sort of supposed to be a green, cheap, like electric car that was not really bad for the environment or whatever. And now Downey Jr. is sort of imitating his own thing.
And doing that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Fascinating. I don't know that it's going to be very interesting, but car restoration shows are for a select group of people. Maybe they'll find it interesting.
Sorry, REJ, not for me.
Yeah, so. I'm not sure that I'm into that one either. Yeah. Speaking of not into that one, Flamin' Hot, the movie.
Oh, you're going to that one? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is okay. So this is going to tie into like everything because Flaming Hot. This is just a movie about the guy who created the Flaming Hot Cheetos, or the idea of the Flaming Hot Cheetos.
Right.
Groundbreaking idea, by the way. Wow. Cool. Making a chip hot. Cool. Boy, there's no originality in movies anymore. We either get sequels or we get
whatever this is.
Bioproduct picks.
Bioproduct picks.
So there's biopics and there's bioproducts because we had the BlackBerry movie that just came out.
The Tetris movie.
And now we have Flamin' Hot.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I swear, if we're going to get like a Logan Paul Prime movie.
Oh my God.
Dude, I mean.
Don't give him ideas. He's a big fan of the podcast.
Yeah, I know. They're going to take YouTube Red and run with it. So, look, I don't know. Like, are these movies good? I don't know. Not.
They're also very sensationalized.
And they're cookie cutter. If you're talking about superhero movies feeling cookie cutter, I mean, here's that.
It's going to be the first simul release, though, on Hulu and Disney Plus.
Okay, cool.
So, because now Disney owns a larger stake of Hulu, they're going to release it the same on both.
I'm not even a fan of Flamin' Cheetos.
Yeah, whatever.
So, I mean, not being a fan of another thing that I'm going to throw in there, Cinderella's getting a horror movie.
In the great tradition now.
So,
the vaunted tradition of Winnie the Pooh, the horror movie.
So I'm talking about lanes about all these movies. Here's the third lane of like, let's take a classic and just make it horror. There we are. There's the movie. And it's, are we going to have another influx of like, now we have live action movies from animated to now we have live action to horror. So are we going to get a horror Beauty and the Beast? Are we going to get a horror Pinocchio?
I'm sure we will.
Yeah. I don't know. At least like with this one, it seems like it's from the same studio that made the Winnie the Pooh. Don't quote me on that one, but that would be kind of...
Even if it's not, it's still not a particularly inspired idea.
No.
Cinderella is not a concept that even let's say, even if you were to do some of these storylines with the most strict interpretation of the original source material, like Brothers Grimm or
the really dark text of it.
Like really try and do that. Even if that were true, it really wouldn't be what they're trying to release now. These are like gore porn horror movies.
Yeah.
Blood and guts and, really stupid storylines. It's not exactly what the Brothers Grimm were trying to do.
Yeah.
There's no message here. There's no fable. There's no learning experience. There's no cautionary tale about the darkness of the woods kind of a thing. It's just watch these people die.
The learning experience is from the filmmakers knowing this doesn't work.
Yeah.
I hope so, at least. I hope they learn that, like, I don't know, like all these movies, all these like lanes that they're putting these movies in because they think that we enjoy them. Maybe.
Yeah.
But maybe not. Maybe movies like Air and Blackberry and Horror Winnie the Pooh just aren't really what we're looking for, but more just like an original story. But hey, I'm a little crazy, going a little off with this. Well,
I mean,
Sunrise.
We're kind of at the dregs though, right? Because today, as we're recording this, is June 6th.
Yeah. Which
is the day the SAG-AFTRA decided to make a vote.
Oh yeah.
And they voted 97% to 3% to strike on June 30th if they can't reach an accord. Sounds like that probably won't happen.
Yeah.
So we're going to get a double strike.
Yeah.
End of June.
So hopefully, I don't know, maybe this will be a little like, I mean, they're looking for pay and like, working like normal working hours and stuff like that. A little pretentious if you ask me, but.
Yeah, there's a number of things in there, including casting policies and stuff like that.
Oh, that too? Okay. Yeah. I might have to look into that more, but. Yeah, I mean, maybe this might be a wake-up call. Most likely not, but who knows? Maybe.
I don't know. I just hope the whole standard in the industry shakes up so we can kind of weed out some of the storytelling. Because these stunt movies and these TV shows that are obviously sort of like made just as filler. It
is filler.
I know that content needs to exist to pad out the programming of something.
Sure.
But we're reaching the industry of streaming content.
Yeah.
It used to be when you worked in TV show. I worked in TV for years. It used to be when you worked in TV shows, you knew if your show based on the Nielsen ratings was going to be good or bad, so you would put in the commensurate amount of work.
Sure.
If you were not rated super high, but they were still buying you to air on their network, you were padded programming. Mm-hmm. That's fine. You still had a job. You still had money coming in. You were still making something. You just were never going to be the high, ratings content on your network.
Yeah, I agree.
But now we're reaching like at-will entertainment, discretionary entertainment.
Yeah.
I only watch things now because I want to.
Yeah.
I don't channel surf. I'm not relegated to watching the last 20 minutes of something before my show comes on TV. I watch start to finish something I want to watch in the time of day that I want to watch it.
Which, I mean, it makes it more difficult for those studios because, then we do get that freedom to choose to watch your show, and that makes it more hard for them to promote it. It's not like I'm forced to watch this, and then hopefully I get hooked from that, which is you're getting hooked from the quality of the show.
True.
Which is kind of a nice concept, especially where we're at these days.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, no, they have to sell me on the poster. They have to sell me on the casting. They have to sell me within the first 10 minutes, or else I'm clicking to something else.
Right.
Or going back to the well of what I already know.
Exactly.
Which they're like, oh, we see that. We'll just bring the well back.
Yeah. I just don't think padding is useful anymore.
No.
Because what you're going to do is fill out your film library with stuff that people are going to constantly spend time sifting through and not watching anyway.
And then you have to take it off your streaming service a year later for tax breaks.
Exactly.
It's a full circle, baby.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I don't know either.
Like Willow, yeah. This the perfect example is Willow of exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And no more of that.
Don't give me padded content. Give me bespoke, good, well thought out content with good writers and good actors that you're paying well. Because I'll watch it.
Yeah.
If you make it and it's good, I'll come.
Yeah.
Like I'll watch it.
It is cool to go from this wave of like good content to good content, or just this wave of that. But now it just feels like it's just normal content to consume.
Yeah, and entertainment comes in cycles.
It does, for sure.
There was a period of time when TV was obviously looked at as even correctly being the dregs of what people watched. People went to the movies for entertainment, like good quality stuff. They would watch TV because it was what was around and it was what was convenient. And then we had this sort of like with the influx of Game of Thrones and a few other shows that sort of like all took off around the same time, early 2000s.
Yeah.
TV really started to get its legs and become really kind of sought after. Shows started acquiring major actors to be on them for seasons at a time because people were like, have you done TV now? TV's a really big deal. And now we're reaching the point where that like heyday of good TV kind of at the top of the wave starting to sort of go down again.
Yeah.
And we're going to reach another, bottom of the wave here before we come back up to like cruising altitude again, I think.
We're hitting that bomb fast because no one's working now, so
that's fair.
They're going to figure that out fast.
Touché.
So,
speaking of not working, we should probably get back to work.
Okay. All right.
All right.
That's going to do it.
See you later.